You know, usually when you have a conflict at work, there's this expectation of a safety net, like it's structural.
Right, yeah.
If you get hired at a tech firm or a marketing agency, you sit through HR onboarding, and if you have a disagreement with your manager, you can loop in that HR rep.
Yes.
Or you can request a transfer to another team, or honestly, you can just update your resume and walk out the door.
Right. It's highly transactional. There is a built-in system of checks and balances
Yeah.
that is specifically designed to keep the workplace functioning.
You have options. I mean, it's a free market.
And that's comforting, right? We all like knowing there's an exit door, or at the very least, an impartial mediator if things get toxic.
But then you step into the high stakes, often kind of whispered about world of doctoral education, and suddenly, well, all those exit doors just vanish.
You really do. It's just gone.
We're looking at a professional landscape that is, honestly, completely unprecedented in almost any other modern career. It's more like a medieval fiefdom than a modern office.
It really is the absolute definition of an extreme power imbalance.
So, welcome everyone. If you are a lifelong learner, which if you are listening to this, you definitely are, you are in exactly the right place. Today's deep dive is venturing into the intensely high-pressure dynamic of the Ph.D. candidate and their supervisor.
It's such a heavy topic, but so necessary.
Specifically, we're looking at the terrifying prospect of disagreeing with the person who quite literally holds your academic life in their hands.
It's a fascinating microculture to study because the pressure cooker environment, it brings out human behaviors you rarely see elsewhere.
It really does. So our mission for this deep dive is to extract the essential facts from all our research on academic power dynamics.
Right.
We want to understand not just why these brutal conflicts happen, but how mastering them is actually, well, a masterclass in professional communication and intellectual growth.
Oh, absolutely.
And I want to emphasize right off the bat to you listening, even if you have never stepped foot in a grad school laboratory, understanding how to navigate this kind of extreme power asymmetry offers incredibly valuable tools for literally any workplace conflict you might face.
It's totally universal. The stakes might be different, but the human element is exactly the same.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can explore how to respectfully disagree, we first need to establish why disagreeing in this specific environment feels so terrifyingly risky to begin with.
Yeah, to really understand that risk, we have to look at the fallout. And the data here is genuinely staggering. Across doctoral programs globally, approximately 50% of researchers discontinue their studies before completing their degree.
Wait, 50%?
Yeah, half of them. Half of them just drop out.
Let's just pause on that for a second. That is literally a coin toss on whether you finish years of grueling, highly specialized work.
It really is.
And from what I'm seeing in the data, it's not because the science is too hard,
Right?
or they just couldn't hack the math. It's because the central relationship breaks down.
Exactly. When researchers look into the root causes of that attrition, the primary driver, time and time again, is issues with the supervisor.
Wow.
Because the supervisor isn't just a manager in the corporate sense. According to the studies we reviewed, they are the central and most powerful person in a candidate's life.
Which sounds so intense.
It is. They control the research topic, they control the funding, they write the recommendation letters that make or break future postdoc positions, and, they are the sole gatekeepers for your integration into the wider academic community.
Right, so if I can throw an analogy at you to frame the stakes for you listening, a PhD supervisor isn't just your boss. They are simultaneously your CEO, your HR department, and, in a lot of cases, your immigration sponsor, all rolled into one person.
Oh, that last point is crucial. That's exactly where the power dynamic gets genuinely scary.
The visa stuff, yeah.
When we look at international students who make up about 22% of global doctoral enrollments, the vulnerability just skyrockets. For non-EU students studying abroad, for instance, their immigration status and their visas are tied directly to their funding contracts.
Which the supervisor completely controls.
Precisely. We actually found documented cases where supervisors have leveraged that visa status and funding to force compliance from the student.
That is just wild to me.
The student feels entirely subordinate. I mean, they are financially dependent, their geographic stability is on the line, so the fear of raising a complaint or questioning a piece of bad advice is paralyzing.
I mean, if my ability to literally stay in the country and not be deported in 30 days is based on my boss liking my work, I'm probably not going to push back on their ideas. I'll just smile and nod.
Right, and the toll it takes on mental health and productivity is incredibly heavy. A massive global survey initiated by Nature looked at over 6,300 Ph.D. researchers.
21.
21% of them reported experiencing bullying.
21%.
And who was the perpetrator? The supervisor, nearly half the time.
That is awful.
It is no wonder that a poor supervisor relationship ranks a top 5 concern globally for PhDs. It often leads to this intense micromanagement and surveillance, to the point where students report feeling like their research project doesn't even belong to them anymore.
Like they're just a cog in the machine.
Exactly. They are just a pair of hands pipetting liquids for someone else's glory.
But I have to push back slightly here. Listening to all these stats, the bullying, the leverage, the surveillance, is this dynamic just the result of a few bad boss outliers who abuse their position? Or is the academic system inherently designed to make students completely dependent?
That is a great question. It is heavily systemic. The traditional apprenticeship model of academia intrinsically concentrates power into a single mentorship node.
Meaning you're basically stuck with one person.
Yes. You are isolated in a silo with one authority figure, unlike a corporate matrix where you might have dotted reporting lines to 3 different vice presidents. This raises an important question. If the system is designed with such an extreme imbalance and the supervisor holds all the cards, how are students expected to survive, let alone thrive, in this environment?
Yeah, because you would assume the logical survival strategy is just to obey, right? Like, keep your head down, say yes to the professor, agree with every hypothesis, and get your degree as fast as humanly possible.
That is definitely the instinct. But our research reveals a fascinating paradox. Disagreement isn't just common, it is actually a required ingredient for success.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you're saying that disagreeing with this person who can ruin your career and maybe get you deported is actually a developmental milestone.
It is the developmental milestone for becoming an independent scholar. Pushing back is a sign of critical thinking, not a sign of failure or insolence. In academic development, there is this concept called the shift in expertise.
Okay, walk us through that. Like, how does that shift happen in reality?
So think about year 1 of a PhD. Your supervisor obviously has more overall subject knowledge. They are the established expert. If they say a certain methodology is best, you trust them.
Makes sense.
But as you spend 3 or 4 years hyper-focused on one highly specific research question, say exactly how one specific protein folds under heat stress, a natural transition occurs.
You become the expert.
Exactly. By year 3 or 4, the student is expected to become the absolute expert on their narrow thesis topic. They should theoretically know more about that specific niche than their supervisor does.
Which is an incredibly intimidating threshold to cross. It's like, I can use another analogy. It's like learning to drive in one of those dual control cars.
Oh yeah, the driver's ed cars.
Right. So in year 1, you're in the driver's seat, but the instructor has their own steering wheel and brake pedal, and they are constantly correcting you. But by year 4, you're driving a Formula 1 car, and the instructor is just sitting in the passenger seat looking at a map. If they tell you to turn left into a brick wall, you have to be the one to hit the brakes.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
But how does a student know when they've crossed that invisible line from needing strict top-down direction to actually needing to push back?
Well, it's a gradual transition, from being a yes man to becoming a peer who can constructively challenge ideas. And what's fascinating here is that many principal investigators, the PIs, the supervisors, actually expect and welcome more pushback as time goes on.
Wait, really? Even the ones who hold all that power want to be challenged?
The good ones do, absolutely.
Yeah.
One PI explicitly noted in a study that they expect their students to disagree with them more often as they progress. Because if you are just agreeing with everything the supervisor says in year 4, it implies you haven't mastered the material deeply enough to spot the flaws or discover new avenues. When this transition works, and the student starts constructively challenging the PI with real evidence, the actual science improves dramatically.
Okay, but if disagreement is supposed to happen, and it makes the science better, why does it so often derail into that 50% dropout rate? Why does it get so toxic if everyone secretly wants to arrive at the truth?
The answer lies in diagnosing exactly what is being fought over. When conflicts explode, it's usually because the two parties don't even realize they are arguing about 2 completely different things.
Right. When we looked at the root causes, they usually fall into a few very distinct buckets, and honestly, they are incredibly relatable even outside academia. One major bucket is misaligned incentives.
Oh, huge problem.
PIs are usually incentivized by the university to build their publication record, secure massive multi-million-dollar grants, and just focus on data volume. They need a team churning out experiments around the clock. Meanwhile, the student just wants to write a high-quality dissertation, defend it, and get finished efficiently so they can start their career.
Right, so you have the boss prioritizing quantity and empire building versus the employee prioritizing quality and speed of exit.
Yeah.
That's a massive structural collision.
Exactly. Another massive bucket is communication gaps. I mean, PIs are juggling those grants, doing admin work, teaching classes, and traveling to conferences. So a student pours their heart into a 60-page draft, waits 3 agonizing weeks, and gets back an email that just says, needs work.
Which is maddeningly unhelpful. It just leaves the student feeling entirely unsupported.
Then you have workload boundaries. We're talking midnight emails, supervisors expecting round-the-clock devotion to the lab, or getting legitimately angry when a student tries to schedule a week off for a family wedding.
Yeah, the blurred lines there are very common.
And finally, you have intellectual property. This is the holy grail of academia disputes over who owns modified code, data ownership, or who gets first author credit on a breakthrough paper.
And if you look closely at those conflict buckets, they actually fall into 2 very distinct categories. It is crucial to draw a line between a content dispute and a process dispute.
This is my favorite part of the research. To help you remember this distinction as you listen, think of a content dispute as arguing over the final destination on a map. Like, are we navigating to Chicago or New York? In academia, that's debating the ideas, the methods, the hypotheses, or how to interpret a really weird data set.
Yes, it's an argument about the science itself. It's purely an intellectual debate.
But a process dispute is arguing over who is driving the car, what time you have to leave the house, and whether you are allowed to stop for bathroom breaks. It's about timelines, working styles, feedback turnaround, or a supervisor demanding you map out your experiments 12 months in advance.
And it is absolutely vital to know which one you are in before you open your mouth to argue. Because you cannot solve a process problem with a content argument.
Meaning what, practically? Walk us through a scenario where someone gets this wrong.
Let's say you are exhausted because your supervisor is violating your boundaries by demanding you work every single weekend. That is a process problem. It's about boundaries and working styles. You are not going to fix that by bringing them a brilliant new scientific data set or a better statistical model, which is a content solution.
Right, that just avoids the issue.
Exactly. Conversely, if your boss thinks your methodology is flawed, a content issue, promising to work faster and send daily updates, a process solution, won't fix the flawed science.
Yeah.
If you try to mix these up, you will just talk past each other.
And that's where the frustration comes from.
Frustration builds, resentment sets in, and that's exactly how you end up becoming part of that 50% dropout statistic.
So let's get tactical. Let's say I've correctly diagnosed the situation. I know whether I'm dealing with a process dispute or a content dispute. How do I actually execute the pushback? Like, how do I say no to the person who holds my academic life in their hands without destroying my career?
When we look at how successful PhDs navigate this, a highly strategic toolkit emerges. It's basically a masterclass in emotional intelligence and conflict de-escalation.
Let's pose a scenario. It's 11:30 p.m. on a Friday. I'm exhausted. My phone buzzes, and it's an email from my PI just completely tearing apart my latest chapter. My first instinct is to type back a furious, highly defensive paragraph proving them wrong. How do I stop myself?
The very first tool is the pause. Do not reply immediately to stinging or nonsensical feedback.
It's so hard not to, though.
I know, because when you get that midnight email, your brain's amygdala essentially hijacks your rational thought process. You perceive a threat to your survival, and you want to fight back. You have to step away for a day.
Just sleep on it.
Yes. Let the biological emotional reaction fade, and then read the feedback again, not defensively, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, what is the core concern hidden underneath their terrible communication style? Are they worried about the quality of the work, the feasibility of the timeline, or just the clarity of your writing?
Okay, so I've calmed down. I think I know what they are mad about. What's next? Do I just go in and argue?
Not yet. Before you argue, make sure you are arguing about the right thing. The next tool is to clarify. Paraphrase their concerns in writing to ensure alignment. You might send a calm email saying something like, just to confirm, your concern is mainly about the sample size being too small, not the actual sampling strategy.
Oh, that's brilliant. It forces them to either agree with your summary or clarify their own messy thoughts, which removes so much friction right out of the gate.
Exactly. Once you are aligned on the problem, you move to strategic communication. And the absolute golden rule here is to handle disagreements in person or over video. Never, ever just via email.
Why is email so dangerous for this?
Because email strips away tone, body language, and empathy. When an overworked PI reads an email, pushing back on their idea, their brain often reads it in the most aggressive, insubordinate tone possible. It breeds resentment. Face-to-face communication reminds them that you are a human being, not just a problem in their inbox.
So I schedule a meeting, I go in, I bring a short written agenda so we don't get sidetracked. But how do I actually phrase my disagreements so they don't blow up?
This is where you use I statements and actively avoid accusations. You have to bypass their defensive threat response.
So instead of going in and saying, you keep changing your feedback and contradicting yourself every week, which, immediately puts the PI on the defensive and makes them feel attacked as a manager.
Right, because if you attack their ego, the conversation is over. Instead, you frame it around your experience. You say, I am having trouble keeping track of the revisions and figuring out which direction to prioritize.
Oh, I see.
It focuses on your experience of the problem. It invites them to help you solve a puzzle rather than defending themselves against an accusation.
That makes total sense for a process dispute. But what if it's a content dispute? What if I want to take a completely different research path and they think it's a dead end?
Then you bring out the next tool, bring data. You do not just walk in and state that you have a different opinion. Remember, PIs are scientists. They are trained to debate facts.
Right.
If you want to change the destination on the map, prove your case with empirical data or established literature. If you can walk in and say, I ran the assay 3 times, and here are the hard numbers showing why the original hypothesis won't work, they really can't argue with it. They respect academic rigor.
And once the meeting is done, there is one final, crucial step to protect yourself. Document everything.
Yes, absolutely critical.
After every single meeting, you send a short, polite follow-up email summarizing what was agreed upon. Something simple like, thanks for the chat. To confirm, I'll revise chapters 2 and 3 by May 15th, and we agreed to pause the secondary experiment. This maintains accountability, but more importantly, it creates a paper trail without sounding passive-aggressive.
It creates a shared reality, which is vital if memories suddenly get hazy a month later.
But I have to push back on this highly rational toolkit for a second. This all sounds amazing in theory, right? The pause, the I statements, bringing empirical data. But we established earlier that these environments can be incredibly toxic. What happens when you do all of this perfectly and the supervisor just isn't acting rationally? What if you use an I statement and they still scream at you?
That is a completely valid concern. This toolkit is primarily designed to de-escalate emotion and facilitate rational debate. But it absolutely assumes a baseline level of professionalism from the supervisor.
Which isn't always there.
Right. It doesn't work 100% of the time. Sometimes diplomacy completely fails, and when that happens, you cannot just keep trying to reason with an irrational person. You need a backup plan.
Which leads us directly to the harsh reality of escalation, toxic traps, and the ultimate escape hatch. What are the options when the relationship is just fundamentally broken and the toolkit fails?
The first step when things go wrong is to seek a second perspective. Go to a co-supervisor, a trusted committee member, or another senior academic. But, and this is a massive but, you must frame this strictly as a request for professional guidance, never as gossip.
That's a fine line to walk.
It is.
Yeah.
But the academic world is incredibly small and deeply interconnected. If you go in just venting about how terrible your boss is, it will get back to them, and it will backfire.
So you are asking for navigational advice, not complaining about your boss. You say something like, I'm struggling to align with my PI on this methodology. How would you approach this?
Right. Keep it completely professional. Now, if the behavior is actually abusive, or they are completely stalling your progress out of spite, you have to escalate through established university channels.
Like HR, basically.
Sort of. Most institutions have graduate program directors, department chairs, or ombuds offices. These structures exist specifically to provide confidential mediation for this exact power dynamic.
And if even the mediation fails, or the environment is just destroying your mental health.
Then we arrive at the ultimate truth of doctoral education. Changing advisors is logistically complicated. It might set your timeline back, and it is emotionally draining. But it is not an academic failure.
Which is important to hear because there is such a huge stigma around it, like you couldn't hack it or you are a difficult student.
But that stigma is dangerous. Staying in an unproductive, deeply toxic dynamic that derails your degree and ruins your mental health is always the worst option. Your well-being is never negotiable. If the environment is toxic, you pull the escape hatch. If we connect this to the bigger picture, navigating this friction, learning how to respectfully defend your ideas against an absolute authority figure, diagnosing the root of a conflict, and setting firm professional boundaries. This isn't just about surviving grad school.
Right.
This is the exact rigorous training needed for the next stage of any high-level career, whether you stay in academia or move into industry.
It really is a crucible for leadership. We started today looking at a landscape with extreme, almost terrifying power imbalances, where your boss might literally control your visa. We saw how easily a PhD journey can become one of the 50% that ends in a dropout because of a broken relationship.
Yeah.
But we also uncovered the paradox that disagreement is actually the goal. It's the sign that you are evolving from a subordinate into an independent expert taking the wheel of that car.
We learn to diagnose whether we are fighting over the destination, the content, or the drive there, which is the process.
We laid out the toolkit, pausing to beat the amygdala hijack, clarifying to ensure alignment, communicating strategically without triggering defensive egos, bringing the data to back up your claims, and documenting everything to protect your reality.
It's all about strategic communication.
And most importantly, knowing that your mental health is the one thing you never compromise, even if it means pulling the escape hatch and changing advisors. So, what does this all mean? It means that friction isn't necessarily a sign of failure. Often, it's a sign of growth. It is the friction that sharpens the stone.
Exactly. Avoiding conflict entirely just means you aren't pushing the boundaries of your own expertise.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away. We talked a lot about the shift in expertise today, that pivotal moment when the student realizes they actually know more about their specific niche than the person in charge, and they have to step up.
Yeah.
Think about your own professional life right now. If respectful, data-backed disagreement is the true mark of graduating from a subordinate to an expert in, what areas of your career are you still acting like a first-year student by just saying yes to everything? And where is it finally time to step up, bring the data, and challenge the consensus?
It's a powerful question to ask yourself no matter what field you're in.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next Deep